So I was doing last year. Gavin Creel had to take a little brief break from Hello Dolly, and they had called and asked if I would jump in for like a very brief for 2 months, and with Victor Garber and Bernadette Peters. So I was like, yeah,
Who says no to that?
I'll do it. It's and Kate Baldwin. So and Kate was helpful too. But I at one point I realized in my lack of information about what works on me and what doesn't as a woman, I put my face into, because that was the other thing in wig fittings, like if I went in for playing in any other job, I would say, I really think it's important I have short sides of my hair, or I want the curl to come over, or I can't wear a sweater, it makes my shoulders look too big. I would say that. Going in for anything with Dorothy, I was terrified because I didn't understand, like, do I want bangs? I don't know. Is there a different type of bang? I don't know. So I put my face in one of those websites where you can then, it will generate every different type of hairdo possible. So I did that, and I was like, okay, so I can't pull that off. And I don't look good like that, or this says something. And I took that to Hello Dolly, and I gave it to Bernadette Peters. And I said, will you just tell me? And she was very excited about Tootsie. The first thing she said, she was like, Tootsie. She loved it. So I gave her the printout, and she would write on the picture she liked, pretty girl. And on the picture she didn't like, she'd say, not so pretty girl. And day after day, we were doing all the fittings then. And we would go into the studio, and they would ask, what do you think about this? What do you want to look like here? I was like, I want to look, and I was staring at Bernadette Peters 8 times a week in awe. I was like, I want to look like Bernadette. Red-haired Italian woman, sign me up.
That's great.
And that's kind of how we started gradually. And then I noticed there was a picture I saw from one of the performances we did. I haven't watched any of the video, but I've seen a photo where I have my arms outstretched and my head up, which is from one of her albums. And I was like, Bernadette, I'm literally copying your movement. And she was like, I approve. So it's very bizarre and crazy.
I'm obsessed with leadership and responsibility and accountability for people that are in the front of the room. I think it's a lot of why I made this Fosse Verdon project, because I made a play about Vince Lombardi, who was a football coach. What do people do when they're given the opportunity to lead other people? And so it is my firm belief that you can make excellent, high-quality things with harmony. And I don't tolerate or accept anything else but that. And there are very talented people who I don't want to be in a room with for 8 hours, and I wish them well. I just won't do it. Life's either too long or it's too short. So I believe that you should create an environment where there's always structure and there's propulsion and you know where you're moving. I think that there's a challenge in our business, even now, of I have the information and you don't have the information. So there's a lot of information hoarding, and I realize there are things that are my job to hold in my head or somewhere else, and they don't need to be shared with the group, and those things exist also. But I believe in transparency. I like to tell people at the beginning of the day what we're trying to accomplish and what we're aiming towards.
So sort of a macro sense of this is why this needs to happen. Now let's talk about granularly
and then you can, exactly.
How you get there.
And that could be like what the plan is for this day or for this week. I don't like sit around and talk at the table a lot. I like to kind of get up and do. And with my rehearsals, I like to.
How did that work out in England? I was just curious, because I always find in England they like to chit chat a lot.
Pretty well for our show. There's so much material that I think that it's just like 10 days of just music with Hamilton when you start, like before we even stage. And so they're just so happy to actually physically move that I think that kind of takes the table work part of it out, because we also use that as a chance to kind of delve in, and that's kind of baked into all of our rehearsal process. So I believe that people make their best work when they feel safe, and that's really the guiding principle for everything that I do.
And in terms of making the move into TV, first with Grease, which was highly successful and really the first thoroughly successful TV musical. What interested you about it, and what did you find surprising?
The first couple live musicals were made by friends of ours, and I respect the hell out of them, and it's a very hard thing to do. And so I would watch them, and I saw the opportunity to learn. Not going first sometimes is nice, and by that I mean always. And I don't know. It felt like it'd be pretty easy for me to sit back and diagnose and not do anything. And I thought, or go and say, this is how I would do it. And so I was very clear when I did this production that I wanted to show how it was made and acknowledge that it was live. I felt that the live element of it really needed to lead. So the way the first thing that I pitched to my producers and to the network was, I want to do an opening number. I want to use, the Grease song from in a way that takes us through and acknowledges the back of a flat and the artifice of this before we drop into the story. It felt to me like doing a musical live on television is so crazy. It is such a strange thing to try to do. And if you watch someone and they're walking and they seem like they're wobbling, but you're only seeing from their waist up, you don't understand why they're wobbling. So you don't really have any context for it. So I said, let's show the building, let's show the wire, let's show the whole thing, and then go in. Because I think it just makes you appreciate the courage of the performer. And it wasn't about trying to gain purchase with a viewer and say, oh, look how hard it is, but it's just acknowledging where you are. And so I thought, let's show the wires early before we drop in. Let's take all the things we love about the theater and put them on television. So there's a lot of that stuff in Fosse Verdon too. Things that are relatively, well-known conventions in the theater of being in a moment and someone, and lights going down and then walking into another scene, which happens all the time. Doesn't happen all that often, in film and television. So with Grease, it also felt to me like I was throwing a party and I wanted to invite everybody. And one of the things that had happened, so I got the job for Grease in 2014 and was planning it while I was doing the Hamilton stuff, and then went to go to Hamilton off Broadway, and then was planning Grease, and then right after the Broadway opening of Hamilton, I kind of went full-time into Grease. So August 2015, I sort of shifted full-time into Grease, which then aired January 31st, 2016. And what I found was, what was already happening with Hamilton was I had made a show that I was very proud of, that I felt spoke to a lot of the things that I cared about, and it was really hard for people to see. And so the barrier to entry was high. And I was about to go and make something completely different, but it was accessible to everybody. And ultimately, I'm a populist. I want to make things that everybody can consume. And so the medium of television meant that everyone was invited. And I think that was really important to me. And so I wanted it to feel like it was a celebration of the community that we all love and that we have participated in and that has given so much to us. And I wanted the crew to be as celebrated as the cast. I wanted it to be about all of that. And I think that ethos was something we felt we could transmit. So it felt like a lot of the skills that I'd cultivated. I always think you come in, put your toolbox down, and you take out your hammer and your screwdriver and 3 blueberries and some dental floss, and you're like, all right, does any of this work here? And they're like, lose the blueberries. And so most of the stuff in my kit I could bring with me. And I'm a big believer in hanging a lantern on the things you don't know. I think there's great power in saying I don't know. And one of the things that shifted for me in my late 20s, and as I was sort of moving closer to production for In the Heights, was I thought that the director had to have all the answers. And yet I was trying to create an environment that allowed my performers and my cast to live in a space of not knowing. But I wasn't affording myself that same space. And I thought most of the directors that I admire, if Mike Nichols said, I don't know, everyone would be like, oh my God, he's a genius. and if I said it and I was 28 and I felt like I was 15, I was worried that I would lose the group. But I realized that the opposite was true. That by owning that and saying, I'm right there with you, let's try to figure this out, that it allowed a kind of creativity. It also took the onus off of me feeling like I had to have the best idea. Something I say a lot is, my job is not to have the best idea, it's to identify the best idea.
Over the course of about a year after I sort of figured out what it might be, because the first part about it was just playing around. Is this the voice? Is this, whatever. And just in my room, like a mental patient. It was just in my bathroom in a mirror, figuring out faces and once I figured out that this right here, this voice that I do in the show, the whole way through for 2.5 hours, whether I'm screaming or whether I'm talking really quiet, is the voice. Then I went to an ENT, a vocal pathologist, and a vocal coach, and they made double, triple, quadruple sure that not only was that okay to do once, but to do it 8 times a week and figure out a way to sustain it. I'm using cartilage above my vocal cords to squeeze together like when you're being choked, like this, you can't really make full sound because the cartilage isn't allowing sound to pass. I can squeeze that cartilage together without using my hands, and I learned it over the course of like a year, 4 or 5 readings worth. And I can do it sort of in any pitch. It's not about pitch or anything like that. It's just, I can come in and out of it whenever I want, and so it's finesse, and it was hard work, which always makes me mad when people go, wow, you're so naturally gifted. I go, there's no such thing as naturally gifted as far as that goes. It takes a lot of work.
How do I get past the writer's block is really that at a certain point, I just have to write it. I'm going to show up. I mean, I know there are people with like pathological writer's block, like they show up and they're like, I can't write anything. I don't get too much of that because I'm a player, I can always just sit and play the piano, so at the end of the day, if I can't write anything, I can still just hit notes and something will come out of it. I can't guarantee any of it's going to be good, but I think the real cure to my own, whatever my version of writer's block is, the cure of it is just I give myself permission to write a shitty song. And then I'll fix it later if I have to, and maybe it won't be so bad.